I want to show you something. In Davos, Switzerland, there was this milestone moment, a ceremonial signing for Donald Trump's Board of Peace. Which, no worries if you don't exactly know what the Board of Peace is or does. I'll get into that in a moment. And I'm actually even going to assume that most people won't recognize most of these people. Like, we don't tend to talk much about the presidents of Uzbekistan or Kosovo, or the prime ministers of Mongolia or Armenia, or the foreign affairs ministers of Morocco or Saudi Arabia. But what is remarkable is who's not here. Where's the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain? Where's Canada in this family photo? Not there, I can tell you that much, and will not be for the foreseeable future, as per Trump's latest counterattack on Carney. The Board of Peace is withdrawing its invitation to you. And then you get this little dig here, calling Canada's now missed opportunity the most prestigious board of leaders ever assembled at any time. And I call this a counterattack because I suspect Trump's position in all of this might be Carney started it.
The middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
Let's talk about why Trump is excluding Canada in this way and why it's not clear to me how much Canada wants to be included in the first place. It was Mark Carney who went on the offensive first in Davos.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition.
He devoted not just part of his speech, but his entire speech to calling out America and how it is now failing much of the world, almost terrorizing it.
Great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
Trump's answer to that was twofold. First, make it personal.
I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us.
Then, make it deadly serious.
Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
And Carney responded to that as well on his return home from Davos.
But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
And that brings us to today, where you have Trump effectively saying, well then, you can't join my new club, and Carney having said all along, well, we didn't even know much about your club to begin with.
With respects to the specifics of the Board of Peace, we haven't gone through all the details of the structure, how it's going to work, what financing is for, et cetera.
It's hard to say what all could even be encompassed in a Board of Peace that had no specific terms of reference at play, how frequently they would meet, the type of work that they would do together, how they would handle and manage disagreements that might take place internally.
There's sort of a bunch of things that might give the Canadian government pause about any kind of permanent involvement in an organization like this.
And Canada's skepticism is not unique, but it is shared among a very specific group of players. Most European countries that have been invited to join the board have also so far held off on accepting because it's not really clear what this Board of Peace actually does. Originally, the advertised intent was to create a kind of steering committee for the reconstruction of Gaza. It was a part of Trump's 20-point plan, ending the war between Israel and Hamas through the creation of this entity that basically oversees everything, strategic oversight as Gaza transitions from conflict to peace and development. But when you look at which countries are included on this invite list for this board, I mean, first of all, that's a lot of countries from very far away who are meant to have a say in the reconstruction of Gaza. Second of all, Israel's a member. But to my knowledge, so far, there's no Palestinian representation here. And we have a few hints as to why the makeup of this board may not have Gaza as its only long-term focus. Exhibit A, what's reportedly in the board's charter, under purposes and functions, the stated goal of promoting stability, lawful governance, and enduring peace in areas affected or threatened by conflict. What's missing here is any mention of Gaza at all, and instead using this much broader language, which Trump has told Reuters is very intentional, that the board is going to start with Gaza and then do conflicts as they arise. So there's whatever that means. At minimum, this is a clear expansion of the board's mandate, and where membership is pay to play. A permanent seat on the board costs $1 billion, with a B, billion dollars cash, the proceeds of which are meant to help Gaza. But this is also something the Canadian government has been wary of since the start.
Canada wants money to have maximum impact. We still do not have unimpeded aid flows, humanitarian aid flows at scale to the people of Gaza. That is a precondition for moving forward on this.
Without clarity about whether or not the president would be determining how those funds are spent, whether or not the people actually affected by the conflict would be involved in some self-determination about what the rebuilding is going to look like, all of those would have surely been items that the government of Canada was concerned about and wished to clarify before proceeding.
And so the idea that, again, $1 billion would sort of be gifted over to this organization with no sort of ethical congressional oversight to be used as essentially the president sees fit. So even if the money is supposed to be earmarked for Gaza, I imagine it's not without the realm of possibility that some of that money could be diverted to other projects that would not actually benefit the actual people of Palestine.
And there's one other much bigger point of concern about joining this board, which goes back to what started this whole dispute in Davos.
When we only negotiate bilaterally with a hegemon, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what's offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty. It's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination.
Let's look once again at that map of countries invited to Trump's Board of Peace, but only show you the ones who've so far accepted the invitation. There's a huge wealth disparity here. Saudi Arabia has an economy 100 times bigger than Kosovo. There's also no common thread in governance. Argentina is a populist democracy. Azerbaijan is a dynastic autocracy. But these are all countries that you might think of as outsiders to the core club of agenda setters in the Western-led world order. They are emerging markets, more deal makers than rule makers. They're mostly not Europe. They're everywhere else.
A lot of times emerging markets and rising countries look at membership in institutions as a legitimation all its own.
I think for many of them, it is a strategic calculus that it is better to be in the room, to have access and proximity, especially to the U.S. president right now, to be able to have FaceTime with President Trump, connection to his team, while concurrently dealing with these specific issues with the Board of Peace.
His administration, his worldview is quote unquote anti-globalist. He views, kind of global institutions, existing global institutions, as sort of corrupt organizations that can't get anything done. So he's spoken about how this Board of Peace could be a way of really replacing the United Nations.
Ultimately, there are too many unknowns to draw any sweeping conclusions here. The mandate of the board, subject to change. The makeup of the board, also subject to change. And that's important for Canada because as quickly as Trump withdrew this country's invitation to join the board, he can also reissue it on a whim. So I'm not going to guess at whether any of this spat is of any consequence. Inclusion, exclusion, we'll see.
I haven't talked to the president lately or got a reading as to how often they are, but those channels were established, and I think they both realize it's not really hard for them to pick up the phone and call each other. So I'm sure that's still happening.
But I will say, this barring of Canada from the board is very clearly escalatory and not de-escalatory. This is inflaming the fight between these two countries, not extinguishing it. So, if nothing else, what we can glean from all of this is that there are rough waters